Okay. Hello? Oh. Can you hear me? Okay. So, hi everyone, welcome to our webinar, Applying for a Job in Germany, Where and How. It's really nice to see quite a few of you here already. But yeah, so this is our second webinar now on what is our series of webinars where we're going to be discussing all various topics about moving to and integrating in Germany. But to begin with, just to say that we are going to be recording this webinar for the purpose of uploading onto YouTube later on. So you know about that. And another quick thing as well is that we are conducting a survey. So for anyone that's already living in Germany, yeah, it'd be great if you could participate in the survey. We'll put the link into the chat later on. Just a quick note about that. But yeah, I'm going to get on with the agenda. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to start off with basically who we are. So Terra Talent, who are we, what we do, yeah, what is our role? And then we're going to move swiftly on to the German labour market. So what is the labour market situation here in Germany? That will go on to professions in demand. So of course, we have the problem of an aging population, and this in turn has had an effect on particular professions that yeah, have quite a big demand. And then recognition. So this is if you've completed any kind of qualification, so degree or vocational studies, someone that isn't in Germany, then yeah, we've kind of tried to condense the whole topic of recognition into just one or two slides. And then salaries, that's of course, so you know, obviously you need to know how much you can expect to be paid and where to look for figuring out what your average salary could be, what you can expect. And then this is also useful for example, salary negotiations later on, which is then part of the application process. So what Germans expect, what German employers expect. So your CV, your motivation letter, and then of course interviews. So basic interview etiquette and what to expect in a German interview. And then of course the job search, which will be a couple of slides, basically just letting you know once you've got all of these other things sorted, your prior knowledge and your documents for the application, actually knowing where to find a job. So yeah, so that's the overview of the presentation, and I'll send you over to Burkhard, who will let you in. He will, yeah, go on with the content of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Danica, for the introduction. Happy to be here to have the chance to do our second webinar. I think that's quite important. This is like the second part of our role. So in the first one, we explained already very much on Germany and the German labor market. So the second one is more now a deep dive into how to apply. I think there will more webinars to come. So in the end, we are happy to receive questions so that we can answer. But please have in mind that Perhaps we cannot answer all those questions, and some are referring to the first webinar, and perhaps when it comes to residence permit and other things, we answer that in the third webinar. Yeah, my name is Burkhard. I worked for the city of Berlin for nearly 20 years. I helped the investment promotion agency to attract companies to Berlin. And I very much was into how to bring talent to Berlin. So I'm quite experienced in visa questions, residence permit things, welcoming structure here in Germany. As you see, I'm now an employer. Set up Terra Talent. Terra Talent is trying to bridge between German companies and regions where there is talent, as it is in Asia or in Africa or in Turkey. I'm trying to give you some insights on how to apply. I did last apply for a job 15 years ago, so I know it's quite a change for the talent side. But as I'm like the employer, I'm sitting on the other side of the on the table of the interview to give you some insight on that, and perhaps later on my colleagues Annika, Paul, Kenny can add something from a talent perspective. What does that mean to apply for a job here in Germany? As you can see, Terra Talent has quite a good network. We are very closely cooperating with Black Tech here in Berlin. The Black Tech is like a diaspora of Black IT talent in Berlin and beyond. We teamed up with a company in Uganda, Kigali, Collaborate, also a platform for future work we're working with. And last but not least, we have a quite huge network in Europe. These are all other investment promotion agencies. We have the problem in Europe that all countries in Europe looking for talent. So we are quite good connected to those areas you can see here on the slide. So if you try to dig into the German labor market, that's perhaps our main goal. But if you can't find anything here, might be an opportunity beyond. So we might refer you to other colleagues in other countries in Europe to get access to Europe. And I always like to name it like, it's not a brain drain to bring people from a place A to a place B. It's always love to name it. It's a talent circulation. So if you have international work experience for 1 to 3 years at one place and then move further on and come back wherever that is, so this is, I guess, helpful for all those areas. Yeah, let's start to dig into the topic. We explained last time pretty much on that. It's important to have a little bit of an idea how the industry landside in Germany looks like. I think a lot of you might know the big names. We've just put in some of them under the headline of corporates like BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, SAP, Siemens. The big brands, quite well known. If you look on the total number of employees in Germany, we have about 40 million employees in Germany. And roughly about 40% of the Germans are working for those corporates. And corporates in Germany, we would name everything perhaps more than 1,000 employees. So big companies, very often with destinations, entities across Europe or worldwide. But the backbone of the German industry are the SME. If you look at it from a European perspective, SME is the definition up to 250 employees. We call it the German Mittelstand, and the German Mittelstand is bigger than these 250 employees, so everything up to perhaps 1,000 employees is here counted as a Mittelstand, and more than 55% of the German workforce is working within those German Mittelstands. And if you look on the brands, on the logos we put here, I think then perhaps you don't know them. Wirth, one very good, a big manufacturer for screws. I think it's B2B. Schaeffler, it's a production site for the automotive industries. Economy, even the Germans, I think, would not know that the brand behind is like MediaMarkt, Saturn, those retail for electric equipment, and those others. So this is very often we say these are world market leaders, but hidden champions. So it's if you start in researching job opportunities, it's hard to find them and to really see what is the standard of those companies. And as mentioned, they are world market leaders somewhat. So sometimes it's a very good job opportunity to work for them and not only go for the big brands like Siemens or Telekom or the others. And then we still have the small companies here below 10 employees. Another 20% of the German workforce is working for them. We included the startup scene, which is now pretty strong in Germany, also on that Rocket Internet, either big company, but they have all those small startups starting here. So this is another opportunity, but even more complicated to find the job opportunities which are related to Rocket Internet. Carsten Maschmeyer, for example, is one of the biggest private investors in a lot of startups in that, and all work engineering, just one example for those you never have heard of before, a very small one, but a world market leader in doing some engineering stuff for the automotive industry. So to have that in mind, there is a huge variety. Overall, I think it's about 3.2 million companies in Germany. That's super huge. And we will try now to explain a little bit on. We have a lot of companies on the one hand. In the end of the presentation, we give you some insights in job platforms where you can look for those jobs. But the matching of 3.2 million companies and talent force isn't an easy thing. So it's sometimes looking like, okay, there is a lot of opportunity, there is a lot of talent, and then simply match that it's not working. And we try to explain a little bit on that. This you should have to keep in mind. On the German labor market, as I already explained, we are a strong economy. Right now, we're still the third largest economy in the world, the largest in Europe. Always have in mind that UK is no longer part of the European Union in that sense. Sometimes when it comes for the startup scene, UK, London might be bigger than Berlin, but it's all a matter of European Union or Europe. The unemployment rate in Germany is very low, which means that we have like full employment. And this is one of the problems we are facing. The job availability, whoever and whatever statistics you're looking up, 600, 700,000 notified vacancies. Unfilled apprenticeship. You have to keep in mind in Germany, we call it die duale Ausbildung. So not all of the German workforce have a university degree. Most of the people are normally going for these apprenticeship programs with the 3-year training on the job in companies. Demography is playing a role. We are an aging population, which is true for all over Europe. a lot of people going to retire within the next 5 years. It's about 15 to 20% of those people leaving the German labor market. This is why there was a number given out by the Federal Employment Agency that Germany needs to attract 400,000 skilled workers per year to meet the demand, which is a super huge number. Within the last years, the net migration in Germany was something about 200,000. So we never made it to the point of 400,000. Then you have to keep in mind that we have some refugee crisis with Ukraine and Syria. So if you don't count them, the migration to Germany was even lower. On the next slides, we have some numbers on how many jobs the Federal Employment Agency puts it like 700,000, 750,000. If you follow the news, sometimes it's always a change in the labor market. There are layoffs in bigger companies. But if you look on the overall development of the numbers, it's increasing. And if you look, as I just mentioned, on the demographics within the next 5 years, it will be also upcoming. There is a discussion on AI, how AI will influence the labor markets. I personally don't believe that AI will kill a lot of jobs. I think AI will kill jobs, but it will also create other jobs with another job profile. So this is not a solution, and automatization also is not a solution for the shortage of workforce here in Germany. We try to bring it a little bit down in what occupations within the next 5 years what are the biggest demands. If you follow some numbers, this was given by a big newspaper: sales, childcare, social work, elderly care. So in the end, it's on everything. What is interesting, if you look on those numbers, is this a job which can be done remotely, or are these jobs where you see, okay, this can only be done if you relocate to another area? So it comes for computer science, IT jobs. I think it's pretty obvious that you can do that perhaps remotely. For other things like elder care, childcare, or those professions in the healthcare industry, nurses, then relocation is important. So this is something where you have to look out. Is it really that you like to relocate for a certain period of time or for a longer time? If you look on those numbers, but in the end, it's the simple summary of those slides is the need for talent is on all branches. It's on all qualification levels, whether it's higher education, university degrees, or whether this is just a non-academic blue-collar level. It's on everything, and it will be increasing. Some deep dives, what that could be in what industries. With Terra Talent, we try to tackle all of those areas. We just can go over that. If you look for the basic requirements for jobs, we Germans, I always name it, we are a paper-based economy. If you have a degree, then you are qualified. If you don't have a degree, you are not qualified. So if you have a paper showing that you successfully graduated from a training institute or a university, that's fine. This non-formal qualification things is still a problem. So we are very formal and paper-driven in that sense. This is important if you're applying for a job in Germany, that your paperwork has to be in a proper mood, otherwise it's complicated. Language barrier in Germany is a topic. With Terra Talent, we are living in Berlin, and in Berlin, I think a lot of things are going on in English. And when it looks for the workforce, you can, I think, go further on in a lot of companies with English. I would think that perhaps 20% of the companies here in Berlin are fine with an English-speaking candidate. When it comes for all over Germany, I would say that 95% still would like to have German language skills. It's depending on where are the clients, where are the project, are these German clients or German projects. So without any German language skills, it's complicated, and you still have to keep in mind that there is a difference in speaking in the business environment and the private environment. Again, in Berlin, I think you can order any meal in English. That's not a problem. For other areas in Germany, that might be more complicated. And whether this is a A2 level, B2 level as a German language requirement is a little bit depending perhaps on the legal requirements when you apply for a residence and work permit. But German is an obstacle. Yesterday I followed a discussion and there was somebody saying we have to train the employers to speak English to have an easier match. I think there is some truth in that too. German employers always looking for a strong motivation. So if you don't go for 100% for the job, then the employer is likely to say, oh, okay, I don't like your application because you don't seem to fully commit to the job. Work experience, I think that's true for all over the world. Just coming from a university as a graduate with no work experience is always more complicated than if you have already like 3 to 5 years of work experience, because all the employers looking for people with a work experience, which could also mean that you worked as a student or do your intern during school time or during studying. So any kind of work experience is always helpful. A proper CV, we're coming later on to that, and letter of references for a German work certificate is always very often required. Here, a formal slide on the recognition. So I think most of you are living not within Europe, and that is why you have to apply for a residence and work permit. In Germany, we set up a big database. The database is called ANABIN, the ANABIN database. And in ANABIN, you can check whether your university is formally recognized here in Germany or not. It must be marked with an H+. I think we will follow on that in a third or fourth webinar to go with that. We are quite experienced in that. So if you have any questions right now on your university degree while you are in the application process, you may reach out to us and so we can double check on that. But this formal recognition is sometimes prerequisite for applying for a job here in Germany. Beyond what is given for the university graduation, there was always a requirement that there must be a certain reference between what you learned in university and what you applied for. This is now more open from the law. We still have some regulated professions that, for example, for accounting, for being a lawyer, and the healthcare industries. When there is a regulated profession, then there are some more qualifications needed with the approval. We can also help on that. In the IT, it's mostly easier because there is no formal requirement for the language skills. The employer simply check on what kind of language skills you have. So you don't need to have a Goethe certificate on A2 or B2 or whatever that is. All right. Another thing which is important to keep in mind, Germany is not Germany. We have in Germany the Bundesländer. The Bundesländer are like the official regions, and the salary you can expect in the regions differ quite widely. It's a little bit depending on, first, where are the big corporates? And the big corporates with the headquarters mostly are in the south of Germany. And this is why you see that the salaries are higher in the south of Germany than they are in the north of Germany. This is mostly just because of the big corporates are paying higher salaries than, for example, the very medium-sized companies. There is still a little bit of a gap between East and West Germany, just because of the history that the industry in East Germany is not that strong as it is here in the western part of Germany. Then we still have Berlin as the capital city, where it's a little bit different. Sometimes it's not true for certain professions. So if you look for an IT job, IT jobs in Germany are like paid everywhere because IT jobs are in such a high demand that you can negotiate your salary on, or so to say, everywhere in Germany, and you will get like the same for other areas. That's different. Munich and other bigger cities, normally the salaries are higher because, on the other hand, it's a calculation of the living costs. So the living cost in those big cities and areas is higher than in rural areas. And as a net calculation, then the employer sees, okay, if the living costs are not that high, we don't have to pay that high salary as in Berlin or in Munich or in Stuttgart. So this is like the second reason for the differences of the salaries. There is the minimum wage in Germany, which is now 12.41 euro. I think this was increasing within the last years every year. So this will go further up, which is, for example, for interns, sometimes a important figure, because interns sometimes are just paid on that minimum wage. All right. Still one for the formal qualifications. If you have to apply for a blue card within this year, the government lowered the thresholds of the salary requirements quite heavily. It used to be nearly 60,000 euros for the big blue card before, and 46,000 something for the small blue card. You can see the actual numbers, which are now a little bit realistic for the average salary here in Germany. The small blue card is pretty much referring to those occupations where there is a big need. We just listed them. You can go through them. So where the highest demand is, the threshold for the salaries was lowered to make it easier to bring foreign talent towards Germany. Then, how to apply. This is a picture where you see a lot of things, but in the end, you don't see anything. These are pretty much examples of job offers published in German job portals. These are like big ones, Norma, big retail, ZDF is the biggest TV production, Telekom. What you can see is there is a lot of text. They are super lengthy. And I did this for a year to do this kind of consulting for employers, how to write a good job offer. In the end, it's always super lengthy and complicated. On the next slide, we just put it a little bit more in detail. Sometimes I think that publishing a job offer is like a marketing tool for companies. If they put out a job offer with only 2 or 3 bullet points, others might think, okay, you don't have to know anything to work for this company, because if there are only 3 bullet points you have to fulfill, should be a super easy job with low qualification. So in that sense, it's a little bit that the companies bring in everything. And very often the job offers are made by the HR company and the respective team, the IT department or the bookkeeping department or the sales department, and everybody is bringing bullet point for bullet point for bullet point, and that makes it super lengthy. I guess on the next page we have another part of that. The big task is, and we just try to make this with this picture, if you put it for a Swiss Army knife, a job description is not the left picture, it's the right one. There are a lot of things, so you have to be really careful in reading what is the main points which is the company referring to. And my strong recommendation is, if you try to understand a German job description, you have to go on the website of the company. You have to read what the company is doing. You have to read the news section of the company. You have to see whether there is something in the cluster going on, that you have a clear understanding what is the company dealing with in that very specific one, and what is out of those whatever 20, 30 bullet points in a job description, the most important ones. It's never possible to meet all of those bullet points written down in a job description. And it's so hard to decide if you fulfill like 40%, 60% of the bullet points, if you go then and try to apply, or if you think, if I only fulfill 100%, I can apply, because it's to find out really what is the most aim. And I just try to explain. The job description is very often set up or written down by the HR department and by the team we are working finally in. So, for example, IT or sales. So this is to have to understand what is the IT department dealing with. So what is important for the IT department, because this will be your colleagues. And try to follow on LinkedIn companies and see what those potential for future colleagues are posting, to have an understanding. What you can also do is try to ring up somebody in the company, in the HR department, and try to raise questions about the background, whether you see really is there a fit or is not, there's not a fit. I know if you once tried, it's so hard to get somebody on the phone in an HR department or in an IT department to get more information on the job description. When I try to consult companies, I always say, if you don't respond to talents which try to call you, then you are a bad employer, because this is the first point where you get in contact with the talents and get feedback and can say, okay, oh, that's interesting, try to apply and refer to our telephone call or not. So if somebody is responding, then I would say that you already see, okay, there is a company very interested in you and in new talents. If those companies, and very often it's just, if you apply, then you just get an answer saying like, thank you, we finally received your application, please be patient, don't ask us again, we will come back to you somewhat in whatever weeks. So on the one hand, I described that there is a big demand. On the one hand, there is a lot of processes going on, and it takes like long. And if those companies still behave like that, they have times and times to react, they are perhaps not the best ones. So try to be very accurate in doing the research and really to find out what is the main point which is on your CV and is fitting to the job description. There is no really an answer on the question. If you fulfill 80%, you can apply. If you fulfill 60%, you can't apply. It's depending. It's depending on your CV, and it's depending on the job description that you see. Okay, if there is one specific, could be a IT language, or I know that one, but I don't fulfill the other one. But if that language is the most important point in that, then go for it. In other words, so it's a little bit of an experience. Beyond that, communication is always a thing employers is looking for. Adaptability, teamwork, time management, all those kind of soft skills. Sometimes it's hard for somebody coming for a university background, stepping into the first job ever. What does that mean? I give you an example for this kind of communication. So when I started my first career, I had to fulfill a 3-day assessment. And within the 3 days assessment, you have to fulfill a task. And after the 3 days, you have to present the result of your research. And this research was done within a team. And there have been people within the 3 days which do not talk to your future colleagues. They just focus on the task and try to make a very good presentation in the end on the task. They were never been hired because they have no teamwork, no adaptability, things like that, cultural awareness. So in that sense, it was like a task. How do those people active with other colleagues, going for lunch with the colleagues, asking them about the company spirit and things like that. And before going to the final decision, the team lead always coming in, asking the team thumbs up or thumbs down. And that was just about the soft skill thing. So never underestimate that it must be a very good fit on the soft skill level. Otherwise, if you even have the hard skills very good, you don't get the job for that. So writing a CV. Sometimes it's looking like a science, hidden science, how to do that. So many CVs longer than 2 pages, maximum 2 pages. Anything beyond that, no HR person ever can read it. I think we have some proper examples on the CVs. Put in an old picture. In former times, you have to write CVs with a handwritten form. I don't see that pretty much happening today. So if somebody is asking you, and it was about that they examine your handwriting, whether you have a good handwriting, a bad handwriting, and doing psychological tests on handwriting, I think this is lucky enough gone. Don't go for templates for CVs you find on Google search. We just put in 2 examples. You may perhaps see in that one this kind of skill set for languages. English is 6 point. Fine. What does mean 6 point in this CV? 6 point out of 100, 6 points out of 10. So there is no reference. So I think everybody knows what that means. But for an HR person, that means like I have to translate that. What is language skills with 6 point in English? 6 points, 7 points. So this does not make sense to make it funny in that sense. There's sometimes in the discussion, there is a template given by the European Union. I think it's called Pass, Euro Pass. I don't like that either, because this is like streamlining anything to the same thing. There has been some individuality in the CV, but don't go too much of that. And within the next one, we show you a template which is pretty much fine. So, for example, with the language example, there is English native language. Then that's clear. Native language is native language. German C1. This is like an official grade going by Goethe Institute. Then it's clear. Office management. So be precise on what kind of skills you have. Sometimes you have this thinking about you have to give them private hobbies and things like that. When I read that somebody's writing, I like to read books. Yeah, that's nice. But is there any relation to the job if you're applying for a sales position? So if you try to bring something beyond your professional experience, your work background, and your educational background, then again it must be must relate to the job. So, for example, if you go for a sales job and saying I did competitive sports before and I was very successful, this is something. Okay, this is a person very much following up very high goals. This is why for a salesperson that might be very, very helpful. So this kind of examples, try to make it simple with the CV, follow, so to say, or easy readable informations, and try to bring it to the point of 2 pages. I mentioned the job descriptions earlier. The job descriptions are very often a lot of bullet points. You have to adopt your CV to the job description. So it doesn't make sense to have one template and you always send the same CV to all those kind of jobs. You might be that there is a change whether you apply for a IT job within a automotive industry or whether you apply for an IT job in an IT company, because then they're perhaps more interested in your IT background, while the automotive industry is interested that you have been having an intern for a automotive industry. So adopt your CV to the referred job. And don't use always the same template. You have to work on that and make it more elaborate. The motivational letter. This is always a complicated thing. I once met an HR person from the Deutsche Bahn, the biggest here German train company. They don't want to have this kind of motivational letters any longer because they learned all the people just go on Google or in AI and just let somebody write something on that. So they don't think that it is helpful any longer. On the one hand, another example is when I hired some years ago a colleague, I go to my boss and said, okay, here I have a CV, which is pretty nice I would like to invite this candidate. And then my boss looked on the motivational letter and there was a typo in the beginning of the motivational letter. And this typo was like, no, we can't invite somebody who's having a typo in his cover letter. I said, yeah, I know that typo, but the rest of the CV is fine. And finally, we hired that. So it's anything between somebody's, so say, why we have those kind of motivational letters. I'll say, if you make anything wrong in that, this is already like a no-go going for that. So on the next one, we try to give you some hints. Again, I mentioned this. Try to research on the company, that you put in something for which is interesting for the company. If you apply for a startup and you just learn that they closed a Series A round and say, okay, I read that. Now you are scaling. Are you going for another market? You're now going to India with your products. I'm from India, or I worked in India. So try to find this point where your identity, your CV is really connected to the company. And this is, again, why it's sometimes important to have a call with the company before, that you might find out what this point might be, that you stand out with your application from others which simply just try to follow the templates. So here are some samples how to do that. Again, my recommendation is only one page. Don't go over 2 pages. Again, HR persons do not have time. They got too many applications, so it must be to the point. And I had once a training, and the training was like, very often you're writing, and the most important point is coming in the end of the presentation or the letter. So try to be very positive and give your main point in the beginning, and then not the much important points later on. So that somebody is starting reading, okay, that's nice, and then reading further, or it's not bored by reading this. Yeah, I read this, I found this job ad in Stepstone, and I was studying, and in the end, it was like, oh, wow, if I had that. So try to make it readable and interesting for the person which has to read it. The interview. Complicated thing very often. We give you some advice here. Plan trip with good time. I'm German. I hate people being late on an appointment, and being late on an appointment for a job interview is like a really no-go. You have to have a very, very good excuse if you are late on that. If you're half an hour early, just go around the block and be on time. Business clothes. A funny thing, I saw so many people just wearing a suit for the first interview, and you can literally see that this person never wears a suit and does not feel comfortable at all in the suit. So try to wear something which you really feel comfortable with, and don't exaggerate. Nowadays, a suit and a tie mostly are not very much. Again, try to see on the LinkedIn page, on the Facebook page of the company, how are the people dressed, and then dress appropriate too. Again, do the research. It's sometimes hard to completely understand the size of the or the scope and the aim of a company, but a simple question: what did you learn on the company? Can you summarize? And then you don't came up with anything or wrong things, then I promise you the interview is done, because then you feel like, okay, if the person is not interested in the company and did not have the time to do a research for 20 minutes, 30 minutes to try to understand. And if you don't understand correctly, if that is, then try to give an answer like, as far as I understand, the company is about and has different departments and organizations, but I'm not 100% sure whether I got that. So be honest on that before you don't tell anything. To be nervous isn't a problem. You can express that. Okay, it's an interview. It's my first interview. I'm nervous. So the other person, I think, normally refers to that. I once run into an interview with a lady which was so nervous that you cannot complete one complete sentence. And then we really stopped the interview after 15 minutes, because then does not make sense if you're too nervous. So try to tackle that. I like the idea of follow-up an email. If everything went fine on the next day, write a nice email. I have been in an interview yesterday. I feel very fine with the interview. I was super impressed what you told to me. So give feedback. That is already helpful. Try perhaps train the interview situation with a friend before that you really try to go through potential questions. Try to write down your answers before that you really have them in mind. Be prepared on a good time. I myself once had an interview and I know all the people in the room, and I thought it like a friendly talk, and it was not a friendly talk. It was an interview, so I have to come twice. Don't take it too easy in that sense, but also don't take it too serious. Try to be as relaxed as possible. Normally, the interviewing person is also trying to be nice. What can happen in Germany is for interview situations. Yeah, for the bigger companies, they have sometimes like a work council. So don't be surprised if there are like 5 persons in the room, like the HR department, somebody from the team, somebody from the work council, and further on. So it's very often not only a one-to-one situation, but a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 persons. Then try to understand who is in the room, who is the most important person in the room, and try to address all of them. That's a little bit the end of my presentation. We put in a lot of job search platforms. I mentioned that in the beginning. It's not easy on the one hand for companies to find talent, because talent is on LinkedIn, is on Xing, wherever. We have so many job search platforms, so even the company doesn't know where to publish it. There is one number, only 1 out of 3 jobs are ever published on a job search platform. Very often jobs just are referred by word of mouth. So this is a very important point to try to get networks. But nevertheless, there are a lot of job platforms. Try to dig into that. We give the presentations in the end so that you can do your little bit of research. And then I just will ask my colleagues if they can add something in a sense of I try to describe it a little bit from an employer perspective, but I think my colleagues, they recently perhaps gone through some interview situations. So I don't know, Kenny, Paul, Danica, whether you have anything to add, and then we are happy to take some questions coming out of the chat. Thank you very much.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Burkhard has obviously covered all the main things, but obviously from an employee's perspective, yeah, it's slightly different. So from my personal experience, coming to Germany, I wasn't so, great in German with the language. And I also fell into the trap of, following this pre-made Microsoft CV template and adding absolutely everything that I've done in my whole life. And I remember speaking to my German friends, and I was like, is this okay? Is CV fine? And they were like, why are you writing? You're writing way too much. So then in the end, it just ended up just being a very short CV, just a date, when I did my work experience, my education, anything that was relevant in my education, it was relevant to the jobs I was applying for, and that was sufficient enough. So yeah, for my advice with the CV, that would just be to be cautious, don't include too much. Like Burkhard said already, hobbies, if they're not relevant to the job position, then you really don't need to include them. but anything that you have achieved that is relevant to the job position. So anything, like you said, competitive sports or any competitions or whatever that shows that you are a somewhat interesting person outside of your professional life, then if it's useful to your job, then obviously include it. And then when it came to the interview, I simply sent my motivation letter and my CV to the companies that I wanted to apply for, and this company that I work for now is also one of those. And yeah, and you also have to tailor your CV and your motivation letter to the job that you're applying for. So even if you don't fully understand yet what the job is or what the company is, just do some prior research, and then this is useful later on because, of course, in the interview you can also ask questions. So yeah, so it's important to tailor your CV to the job position. So that was what I did. I emailed the company. I found like the hiring officer. I emailed him directly, and then for the first interview, it was mostly introductions. So getting to know each other. He was asking why I came to Germany, what I wanted to do in Germany, and then obviously the subject of language came up, and he asked me, "Okay, are you learning German?" And I said, yeah, of course. And then we switched the conversation into German, so then I could show him what my German skills were. But I also explained to him, yeah, I know that my German isn't perfect right now, but I'm working on it. And if there's a position that I can use English and also my limited German, then I'm open to that. So it's also having this sort of negotiation as well. So you have to let them know what skills you have, and you can also work around that as well if all your other skills are, useful. And then the second interview, so for the first interview, he then explained what the job was, the main tasks that I would be doing, what the company is, what the goals are for the company. And then when it came to the second interview, I then had to then say how my skills were, useful to the company's goals. And yeah, and then that was the interview. It was very relaxed. So obviously, like Burkhard already said, you don't have to wear a suit and you have to look completely, over exaggerated, but also avoid, trainers and joggers and stuff, just to still look smart. But yeah, that was my experience, and yeah, I hope there's some useful advice in there. If Kenny or Paul can add on to that.
And thank you, Edenika, for sharing. Thank you, Nika, for sharing. I hope you can all hear me. So my name is Kenny. Originally, I'm from Nigeria, but I live in Germany. I think something that can be very relevant, maybe more for entry level and a bit of mid level. What works very well is networking. Yeah, you need to be very proactive, attend a lot of virtual events if you're not already in Germany. You can explore reaching out to even employers, just offering to maybe volunteer or just show that you're really interested in them and not just, yeah. So relationship building is very key and crucial. I think that worked very well for me. So it's really good to not just only connect to people, but actively investing in quality relationship, building relevant relationship. So just being proactive, see what is happening on ground. So that'll be my part because they've said everything, but I think this other aspect might be very relevant for young people who are either at entry level or mid level. Because I think in Germany there is the issue of trust. So it's very good to already build relationship and really, really intentionally invest in relationships. LinkedIn works very well, invite employers. You don't even have to wait to just apply for jobs, right? Just see what's happening on the ground. If you find anything like a project, reach out. And I think this will be my main sharing. Thank you, Danica.
Oh, I will add on to that as well as, yeah, I forgot to mention networking. Networking is really important. So Burkhard already said that not all jobs are advertised online. A lot of it is word of mouth. So it is just trying to get yourself out there, meeting people from different industries, and just asking around, seeing what there is, what's on offer, and going to, job, what are they called? These, the job market, like what are they called? The markets where you can go to the different job fairs. Thank you. Job fairs. These are also really useful. This is also a useful resource to finding jobs and finding people who can, sort of get you into a certain industry, certain area, get you to the right person, to, apply for a job. So yeah, the networking is really important.
Yeah, and then one thing I think people should also take note of is like the fact that like Germany is a very bureaucratic country, and then your interview process might take longer than expected as compared to your home country, because it happens in stages. There's the first stage where it's like the introductory interview, and then the second interview where you have it with the hiring manager, and then probably the third one where you're introduced to the team, and then the team asks you questions where you have to answer. And then there could be a fourth one where you're given a test to complete, or a task to complete, to see if you are really capable of doing the role assigned to you. And even after that, you should also know that you are not the only person in the interview process. So you might also be maybe in the final stages with two other people who are equally good as you. So it actually takes a while. It might take up to 6 to 7 weeks before you are even hired. So you should also exercise some patience. And officially in the interview process, after your interview, you follow up. If you had a good interview, you follow up. After the first follow up, you might also need to give the interviewer time, about 2 weeks. Officially, they say 14 business days. So you give them about 2 weeks. If you do not hear from them, you reach out again and then find out how your interview went. So apparently our experiences are different, but I do believe it's generally around this. That's all I'll have to say.
So yeah, that concludes the presentation now. So we will dedicate a bit of time. If anyone has any questions, we will have a quick question and answer session. But please be aware, just try to keep it to this topic. We will be having other webinars in the future. But if you do have any suggestions for topics that we could cover in future webinars, you can also put them in the chat too. We're open to all suggestions. But yeah, if you've got any questions, then you can put them in the chat now and we'll try to answer them between ourselves.
So there was one question in the chat, Damien, on the language certificate. I came with some recommendations and sent it to you by email.
It is quite interesting. I think probably no one has a question, and then probably we answered all your concerns regarding the application process or how to apply for a job and where to apply for a job in Germany. So I think with that being said, we'll call this webinar, or we'll bring this webinar to an end. So thank you all for joining, and I was really glad having you with us today. I wish you a wonderful time and a wonderful day. So all the best, and then thank you. We wish to see you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.